Just Me, a place to be me, where you get to experience life. So life is a journey, not a guided tour. If you want the rainbow, you have to go through the rain.
Welcome back to another episode of Just Me Podcast, where we keep it real, raw, and restorative. I'm Tracy.
I'm Sasha.
And I'm Sharina, and we're your hosts, therapists, educators, and sisters on a mission to unpack mental health through the lens of identity, culture, and connection.
And today we're going to dive right into another week of our gender and mental health series. This one is called Masculinity Reimagined, Beyond the Tough Exterior. And let's be real, this one might ruffle some feathers, but it is definitely needed.
So, one of the things that has been talked about in today's media and just amongst the culture is that hypermasculinity. And hypermasculinity says a real man must be dominant, aggressive, and emotionless. So that is when we pull out the Webster definition and merge it with culture innuendos and experiences and generational norms. Hypermasculinity, what I've come up with is that hypermasculinity says that a real man must be dominant, aggressive, and emotionless. But that script, that experience that we're kind of holding men to, that script shuts down a lot of experiences of healing, restoration. So let's take a deeper dive into what hypermasculinity is really saying and how it may or may not be effective for what the next generation needs to accomplish.
In conjunction with that, do we connect that with toxic masculinity? And with that, it's almost like naming emotional silence. So there's a lot of things that are not said. And when we don't express our feelings or when they don't express their feelings, it's almost like being isolated with your thoughts when you're not communicating them. And it also can cause rage. And if you keep that on in for a long period of time and not express those feelings or those emotions, it can end up being depression.
And I think it's more common that you see a lot of men and women hold those emotions in, and the truth of the matter is it doesn't go away. It just gets louder. So we're not saying that masculinity is bad. It's just the distortion that hurts. Like when you hold those emotions, it's like thinking like it's gonna go away. It don't. It just piles up and piles up.
Are we indicating that when it comes to masculinity and redefining what it is, having an emotional space to communicate those feelings? But before you are able to communicate those feelings, you have to be aware of what you're feeling, which is emotional awareness. And that takes a lot of courage to recognize those feelings of vulnerability in order to express them.
Yeah. And I know just recently it's a saying because you see it on T-shirts and cups that it's okay not to be okay. So it takes more bravery to say that I'm not okay to pretend that you are okay. And the reality of it all is that therapy isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And it just makes me think of that as a child, we would watch Superman. And Superman and most men walk around like Superman with the S on their chest. And it's like, look up in the sky, there's a bird, there's a plane, there's Superman. He's able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. But in reality, he never leaped over no buildings because he flew. So, when I look at it, it's like he was able to rise above those things. And when he's not Superman, he's that mild mannered Clark Kent. So he dealt with emotions. And so we have to make sure that we're able to talk. It's okay not to be okay and to find yourself in that vulnerable spot.
And I think that when we kind of break it down, emotion is a very human ability, a very human trait that we as human beings and we as species has been able to develop over the years of just change. We have mutated and been able to adjust, and emotions have come with that. So we have gone out of the primal instinct and we are developing more as human beings. So emotion is very human, and shutting down creates that disconnection. So naming your needs. I know I was talking to I was at a graduation recently, and I was talking to a guy, and his relative was graduating and walking across the stage, and I said to him, he had some allergies going on. I said, jokingly made a statement, it's okay if you cry. It's okay if you cry because your loved one is graduating and walking across the stage. And his comment to me was, in a joking manner, nah, I'm a thug. I don't cry. And I just kind of, I sat in that moment and just kind of reflected on it. And I laughed it off. And because it wasn't a space for me to really kind of hash out what that really meant. But kind of thinking about it now as I reflect on the situation, it brings up so much for me that I just don't even know where to begin. But kind of going back to what we're talking about now is that it's okay. Emotions are human. What do you ladies think?
Yes, you're right. It is human. It's a sense of expression. And it's okay to express those emotions. And the more men be okay with expressing those emotions outward, and that would hopefully allow other men to do that or other people to do that. It was leadership that, like you
Mhm.
said, it's okay to express those emotions.
And it doesn't have to be bad because I mean his loved one was graduating, so it could have been tears of excitement, enjoyment, like, hey, they finally made it. I'm crying because all of the blood, sweat, and tears that we put in, and we got you across the stage. It could be my relative is growing up, progressing onto the next stage and phase. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be enjoyment, happiness, elatement.
Yeah, and when y'all was talking, even hearing the word leadership, I just looked this in my own environment growing up, like the how men impress that on their sons, like to be
Mhm.
strong, not to cry, to you know, you have to show your manhood. You go be, and they even say man up, man up, man up if you even try crying. And when I compare that to like the military, and no matter how hard and how tough you appear like in uniform, and we train them to do what they have to do, that when you lose a soldier, male or female, everybody's crying.
Mhm.
And but that crying, it also brings a bond as because we're a family, and that loss. So it's hard. It's hard to watch those dynamics just for me. It like hearing like the young kids now, my own children raising boys, some of the things that they say and challenge. And I got to correct them. Like, wait a minute, no, it's okay for him to feel. It's okay for him to cry, and to make sure that they identify that. And then when I even backtrack to look at those misses that I had, that that I shut my son up when he was, over something, like what did I say? Like just
Sniffing
trying to,
or
try to
yeah.
remember, like, man, you a man, you a man, you don't supposed to, boys are supposed to cry, but again, that's an emotion and we all have those feelings, and it's okay to change the dynamics. Like we need to just start changing the dialogue when we're raising our young men, um, that it is okay to feel and then embrace those feelings. But then you come in the challenge where the adult male don't know how to challenge the feelings. I don't know how to feel my emotion. I don't know how to express what I feel. And I think, we see it when they come into the office, because we have to give them a chart. These are feeling words, and get in touch with these feeling words, because it's not something that we are used to. And that's not just males. It goes with females too. Like, because we're just not really used to expressing those emotions.
Mhm.
But men, you are allowed to heal. You don't have to perform. You're not Superman. You're not all the superheroes that we see on television, in the comic books, like you are a real human that has emotions, and you can't get rid of them. They're not going to be like, oh, I don't have them. You might try to not acknowledge them and express them, but they are there. And we talked earlier that you can't keep them embedded because they get louder and louder. And that one kids movie with all of the emotions, Inside Out.
Inside Out,
Yeah,
yeah.
Inside Out 1, Inside Out 2, and that was such a good movie, especially when they talked about that anxiety, just to see that, and that's what's happening in the minds of not just children, because as an adult, I related with it 100%. Like, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And you're walking around with all of those emotions bottled up. What do you do?
And I think it's important to recognize that the concept of masculinity and femininity is a social construct. So we all have the necessary things, or the can't think of the word right now, but testosterone, estrogen, bless. Oh goodness. All of the chemicals in our body to really hold things that we have tied to masculinity and femininity. So it really is a social construct. Men have estrogen, they just don't have as much as women. Women have testosterone, they just don't have as much as men. And it's okay to feel. It's okay. We have all experienced that. I think that when we were growing up, or as being raised, our parents did the best they could with the environment that they had around them and what it meant to keep their kids safe. So if vulnerability looked like it may have hurt their children, or made it an unsafe environment, then it was something that it's like, you can't show vulnerability, you can't show weakness, because you might be taken advantage of. And so thinking about it in a sense of protection and security, right, understanding that and saying, okay, now the world has developed into new, having, new social norms, and embracing the fact that emotions are okay. So with that, we also have to change our mindset and our thinking.
So with that said, and what you all have expressed, maybe we should reimagine masculinity in a different form and think of it as softness, showing strength and wholeness. And as we expressed earlier, that is okay. It's okay to express your emotions. It's very, very important that we release those emotions, and showing vulnerability, once again, and showing softness, that also displays strength. And we want you all to know that it is okay.
And just as our podcast is entitled "Just Me," like really get in tap with who you are. You don't have to be what you see on TV. Who you really are. Alignment with who you really are supports mental health.
Absolutely, absolutely. Progesterone. Got it. Said it. Progesterone.
You had to come back and get it.
I had to get that word. I had to get it.
Man.
You
got it.
Ooh, it's like a tongue twister for me. Anyway, this is the Just Me podcast, where we're just real, we're just seen, and we're just healed. So until next time, guys, take care of yourself so that we can all take care of each other.
Thank you so much for listening to Just Me Therapy podcast. If you are seeking further one-on-one diagnoses, interventions, and treatment plans, please consider scheduling an appointment with an individual counselor at Journeys Counseling Center, located in Greensboro, North Carolina. Journeys can be reached at 336-294-1349. The mission of Just Me Therapy podcast is to use authentic conversations to uplift one's mind, body, and soul. The goal of Just Me Therapy is to offer affordable education and insight to individuals who experience financial barriers to accessing individualized behavioral health care services. With that being said, The information, including opinions, advice, and recommendations discussed in this podcast, are intended for individual, informational, and educational purposes only. Such information is not intended to substitute the recommendations of your own licensed therapist or healthcare professional. Although we are licensed behavioral health professionals, we are not your licensed behavioral health professional. As a result, the advice mentioned on this podcast should not replace the recommendations offered by your own qualified health professional.